The word narcissist gets thrown around a lot. A bad date. A difficult boss. An ex who was not very nice. We use the label so casually that it has almost lost its meaning. But genuine narcissism is not just someone being selfish or having a big ego. It is a specific, recognizable pattern of behavior that affects millions of people, and the person on the receiving end often does not realize what is happening until they are deep inside it. Today I am going to walk you through 7 signs that you are dealing with a genuine narcissist. These are not pop psychology guesses. They are drawn from clinical research and the diagnostic frameworks used by mental health professionals. And if you recognize several of these in one person, it does not necessarily mean they have a clinical diagnosis. But it does mean the pattern is real, and it is worth understanding. Let us get into it. Sign number 1. The conversation always comes back to them. Everyone talks about themselves sometimes. That is normal. But with a narcissist, there is a specific pattern. No matter what the conversation starts with, it ends up being about them. You mention a problem you are having at work. Within 2 sentences, they are telling you about their work problem, which is bigger, harder, and more important. You share good news. They immediately top it with their own achievement. You describe something painful you are going through. They redirect to a time they experienced something worse. This is not ordinary self-centeredness. It is a fundamental inability to hold space for someone else's experience. Psychologists describe this as conversational narcissism, a term coined by sociologist Charles Derber. The narcissist does not just want attention. They need it. And they redirect conversations toward themselves not out of malice, but because other people's experiences genuinely do not register as important in their internal world. If you consistently leave conversations feeling unheard, unseen, or like your experiences were minimized, pay attention to that feeling. It is data. Sign number 2. They cannot handle even minor criticism. Most people find criticism uncomfortable. That is a universal human experience. But the narcissist's response to criticism is on a completely different scale. Even a gentle, well-intentioned piece of feedback can trigger a reaction that is wildly disproportionate. They may explode with anger. They may freeze you out completely. They may turn the criticism back on you, attacking your character or motives for daring to raise it. Or they may collapse into victimhood, making you feel guilty for ever mentioning it. This reaction is driven by what psychologists call narcissistic injury. Underneath the confident exterior, the narcissist's self-image is surprisingly fragile. It is maintained not by genuine self-esteem but by a constant flow of external validation. When criticism threatens that image, even slightly, the defensive response is immediate and intense. This is also why narcissists tend to surround themselves with people who agree with them. They are not building a team. They are building an audience. Anyone who challenges the narrative becomes a threat, and threats get dealt with. Sign number 3. They charm you fast, then devalue you slowly. This is one of the most disorienting experiences of being in a relationship with a narcissist, and it follows a remarkably predictable pattern. In the beginning, the narcissist makes you feel like the most important person in the world. The attention is intense. The compliments are constant. They seem to understand you in a way nobody else ever has. This phase is sometimes called love bombing, and it is not limited to romantic relationships. It happens in friendships, work relationships, and even family dynamics. But once the narcissist feels secure in the relationship, the dynamic shifts. The warmth starts to cool. The compliments become less frequent. Criticism creeps in, often disguised as concern or jokes. You find yourself working harder and harder to get back to that initial feeling, to return to the version of the relationship that existed at the beginning. This cycle of idealization followed by devaluation is one of the most well-documented features of narcissistic relationships. Researchers call it the narcissistic abuse cycle. The initial charm was never about genuine connection. It was about securing a source of admiration and control. Once that source is secured, the narcissist's need to maintain it through effort disappears. If you have ever felt like someone put you on a pedestal and then slowly, painfully, knocked you off it, this pattern may be familiar. Sign number 4. They rewrite history. You remember the argument clearly. You remember what was said, who said it, and how it made you feel. But when you bring it up, the narcissist tells a completely different version of events. They deny saying things you clearly heard. They insist events happened differently from how you experienced them. They accuse you of being oversensitive, dramatic, or confused. This is gaslighting, and it serves a very specific purpose. It transfers the power to define reality from you to them. If they can make you doubt your own memory, your own perception, and your own emotional responses, then their version of events becomes the only version that counts. Over time, this erodes your confidence in your own judgment. You start second-guessing yourself. You start apologizing for things you did not do. You start asking permission to feel the way you feel. And that erosion of self-trust is not a side effect of the relationship. It is the mechanism through which control is maintained. If you watched my earlier video on the 5 signs of manipulation, you will recognize this from the gaslighting section. It is the same tactic, and it is central to narcissistic behavior. Sign number 5. They need to feel superior. Narcissism is not just about wanting admiration. It is about needing to feel better than other people. This need for superiority shows up in ways that are sometimes obvious and sometimes surprisingly subtle. On the obvious end, it looks like constant bragging, name-dropping, exaggerating achievements, or dismissing other people's accomplishments. On the subtle end, it looks like backhanded compliments, quiet put-downs disguised as humor, or a pattern of undermining the people closest to them so that nobody around them ever feels too confident. Psychologists distinguish between 2 types of narcissism here. Grandiose narcissists display their superiority openly. They are the loud, boastful, attention-seeking version most people picture. Covert narcissists are quieter but equally driven by the need to feel special. They may present as humble or even victimized, but underneath that exterior is the same deep need to feel superior and the same fragility when that superiority is threatened. Both types share the same core feature. Other people are not experienced as equals. They are experienced as either mirrors that reflect the narcissist's greatness or threats that challenge it. Sign number 6. They lack genuine empathy. This is perhaps the most fundamental sign on this list, because it underpins almost everything else. A narcissist can learn to perform empathy. They can say the right words. They can mimic concern. In fact, many narcissists are socially skilled enough that they appear deeply empathetic in public or at the beginning of a relationship. But when it matters, when someone close to them is genuinely hurting and needs real emotional support, the performance falls apart. What you see instead is impatience, irritation, or a complete redirection of the conversation back to themselves. Your pain is experienced by the narcissist not as something to support you through, but as an inconvenience, a disruption to their emotional needs, or even a threat if your distress implies they did something wrong. Research on empathy in narcissistic personalities consistently shows that the deficit is not in understanding what someone else feels. It is in caring about what someone else feels. Narcissists can often accurately identify emotions in others. They simply do not feel compelled to respond to those emotions with compassion. The cognitive machinery is intact. The emotional motivation is missing. This is why being close to a narcissist can feel so confusing. They clearly understand you are upset. They just do not seem to mind. Sign number 7. They never truly apologize. Listen carefully to how a narcissist says sorry, because it will tell you everything. I'm sorry you feel that way. That is not an apology. It is a redirection of responsibility onto your emotional reaction. I'm sorry, but you have to understand why I did it. That is not an apology. It is a justification with an apology-shaped wrapper. Fine, I'm sorry. Can we move on now? That is not an apology. It is a tool to end the conversation without any genuine acknowledgement of what happened. A real apology requires 3 things: recognition of what was done, acknowledgement that it caused harm, and a commitment to change the behavior. Narcissists struggle with all 3, because a genuine apology requires accepting fault, which threatens their self-image, and prioritizing someone else's feelings, which their empathy deficit makes difficult. If someone in your life consistently offers apologies that leave you feeling worse rather than better, It is probably because the apology was never designed to repair the relationship. It was designed to end the conversation. Now here is something important. The difference between narcissism and a bad day. Everyone displays some of these behaviors occasionally. Everyone has been selfish, defensive, or dismissive at some point. That does not make them a narcissist. What distinguishes narcissistic behavior from normal human imperfection is the pattern. It is persistent, it is consistent, and it does not change in response to feedback. A person having a bad day might snap at you and then genuinely apologize later. A narcissist will snap at you and then explain why it was your fault. A person under stress might dominate a conversation without realizing it. A narcissist will dominate every conversation because they genuinely cannot conceive of the alternative. The pattern is what matters, not any single incident. So how do you protect yourself? If you recognize this pattern in someone close to you, the most important thing to understand is that you cannot fix it. Narcissistic behavior patterns are deeply ingrained and very rarely change without professional intervention, and even then, the person has to want to change, which is itself uncommon because the narcissist's self-image typically prevents them from acknowledging the problem. What you can control is your own response. Set clear boundaries and observe how the person reacts. In a healthy relationship, boundaries are respected. In a narcissistic one, boundaries are treated as personal attacks. That reaction will tell you everything you need to know. And talk to someone you trust. One of the most effective things a narcissist does is make you feel like the problem is you. An outside perspective, whether from a friend, a family member, or a therapist, can help you see the situation clearly when you have been too close to it for too long. If this video helped you put a name to something you have been experiencing, subscribe for more on the psychology behind everyday life. And if you have your own experience to share, the comments section is open. Sometimes the most valuable thing is knowing you are not alone. I will see you in the next one.